it's Sam. Welcome to my first YouTube video ever. If you're from Instagram, then hey. If you're not, then my name is Sam. Like I said, I'm a watercolorist. I work in oils. I love to work in my sketchbook. And I paint pretty much a little bit of everything. But today I chose this picture that I found on Pinterest, and I thought it was just really cute. It's a girl with braided pigtails and red ribbons in her hair. To begin, I'm just going to lay down a base layer for the neck using this watered down reddish orange color. I use a lot of water in my first layers so that they stay light and you can paint over the top of them. At times I'll add blue when the skin color is a little bit cooler, or if I want to add shadows. So right now I'm adding some blue so I can drop in these collarbone shadows while the paper is still wet. This way the pigment will spread out and look softer. And here you can see me doing the same thing with the hair, just laying down a base layer, which is this lightened yellow ochre, I believe, and then dropping in some shadows while that's still wet. When it comes to these bold colors, I really like to use paint straight from the tube to get like the most saturated color. So for these ribbons, I used my Pyro Red from Daniel Smith. I think I'm saying that right. Honestly, I feel like I started these ribbons a little bit too early in the painting just because they're so pigmented and everything else is not painted. Sometimes you can run into issues with like the pigment bleeding, but I don't really care. Now we're going to move on to the shirt. For my shirt, it's a white shirt, so I'm going to be blending up my shadows using blues and browns. That's my go-to for making any gray. And I also will be using wet and wet technique, so I'll lay down a layer of clean water and then drop in all my colors on top. One of the most difficult things to get right with watercolor is water control. Really difficult. Wet and wet really helps make that easier because it lays down an entire layer of water that is consistent, and then it allows anything that goes on top of that to kind of spread out within that water. Not sure if that's really making sense to anybody, but basically wet and wet allows you to have like the smoothest, most consistent textures. So I'll mainly use wet and wet technique during the beginning layers or for things like fabric or skin. Now that the base layers are dry, we're going to go in with the details. I really like to use my silver brush, Black Velvet. I think this is a size 4 round brush. I will link it in the description, but I really like to use this for details because, as you can see, it's really small and pointy. It holds a lot of water. I don't really have a method for choosing my colors for all these little shadows. I mainly just looked for dark reds and dark browns and goldens for the hair and ribbons. So for the ribbons, I ended up using alizarin crimson, and the hair, like I said, was just a bunch of browns and goldens I could find. Figuring out your timing can be kind of difficult with watercolor as things need time to dry and I'm impatient. So a lot of time you'll see me working section to section and waiting for one section to dry before I go back to work on it. So that's why half this painting is detailed and the other half is just starting. I was honestly so excited to paint this little heart necklace because it's the only other bit of red in the painting. But it was a bit of a learning experience. I've never painted this tiny of a chain before, and I was not about to save all the little whites of the paper for the highlights. So I kind of ended up just doing like a weird squiggly line, but that's what it looks like. So a success? I don't know. On the other side, I kind of did more of this O pattern, but yeah, I don't know. I like how it looks. At this point, the neck was looking pretty dull to me, so I decided to go in for another layer of wet and wet and just drop in some reds to warm up the skin tone, and honestly, I think it looked a lot better. Honestly, at this point, I was just really lost trying to figure out how to get this painting to blend into the rest of the page. I ultimately decided on just painting a bunch of red stuff around it, so that's where these heart suckers come in, or lollipops, whatever you want to call them. Either way, I've always wanted to paint these. I'm not really sure why, but I painted this the day before Valentine's Day, so it kind of makes sense. It was kind of a difficult thing to paint, especially with watercolors, just because I was kind of limited with the amount of reds I could choose from, and they all needed to be different from each other in order for this painting to make sense. My way to do it was to start wet and wet, like you see me doing with the other one right here, and then I would use the color that I used in the ribbons as my mid-tone, so that's the main color of the sucker basically. I used a reddish orange color for the stick of the lollipop / sucker, and I really like how that turned out. For the highlights, I would just blend out a red or like this orange mixed in a little bit, and it came out with a really pale pink, which I liked for the highlights. You can see it on the right sucker. And then the shadows, I just used alizarin crimson like I did in the ribbons, and sometimes I would add a little bit of ultramarine blue to get a darker color, but it got iffy because it started to turn black, so use it sparingly. Remember to be patient with yourself for these first few layers, as they're not going to look very good. Unless you're a watercolorist who can make everything look good in the first layer, which there are some out there, I have seen them, and kudos, hats off to you. I'm not that person. Most people are not that person. Watercolor is all about pushing through the ugly stage. You will see many ugly stages. It's layer after layer after layer. I mean, you can look at the beginning of this video. It wasn't cute. That's why I avoid showing a lot of the beginning of my process for my videos, just because I just don't think it looks good. I prefer how it looks closer to the finish. But you guys want to see it, and honestly it is probably the most important part of the painting, because a lot of people can render a painting, but beginning stages are definitely a bigger question mark, especially if you're a beginner. It's really easy to get discouraged and give up too early into your watercolors because it's not looking the way you want it to, but that's really typical. So please do not give up. Keep pushing through the painting. It will look how you want it to eventually. I heard a quote around 2 years ago when I first started my art journey seriously that said paintings or artwork in general are only a failure once you give up on them. That quote has really stuck with me. Prior to hearing it, prior to starting my art journey in 2022, I was someone who always gave up on my art and let that be a representation of my skills. I would only get halfway through a painting thinking this is never going to get better and this is just as good as it gets. However, once I adopted this mentality that paintings or artwork that I make is only a failure once I give up on it, that I can turn any bad painting into a painting I love, it's really helped to boost my confidence skills overall. Because I remember all the time in high school and early college when I would start an artwork, the second things started to go awry, or they weren't progressing as quickly as I thought they could, or it just wasn't matching what was in my head, I would just let that represent my skills as an artist. I would give up right then and there and say, I'm not capable of much more. It's not going anywhere. All these ideas I had were just not gonna amount to anything because I obviously couldn't execute them. And I would just let that ugly stage basically be the definition of who I was as an artist. When in reality, I just didn't give myself the chance to. You have to let yourself struggle. I will let you know that with every single watercolor painting I have made or will make, I have struggled with every single one of them, and I will continue to struggle with all of them. There's been a point, especially even in this spread, where I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know how any of these things fit together. I'm just putting down random colors. I'm placing random objects, random textures. I just want it all to fit together. I don't really know what the end result's going to be, but I'm just working towards something that I'm happy with. Anyways, that's the end of my rambling. I talk a lot and I talk pretty fast, so I apologize for that. And I also apologize if this video is a bit monotone or a little bit, boring. Just put it bluntly. This is my first video though, so the quality will hopefully improve with time. But for those of you watching, know that your support means so much to me. It's what pushes me to keep growing as an artist and keep making this content for you guys. But for now, I hope you enjoyed watching. Let me know in the comments what you want to see for next week's video or any videos in the future, and I'll see you guys next week.